Dobrý večer, milí priaznivci Nextry a Night of Chances. Vítam vás na dnešnom CEO Talks spoločnosti BizMut a dovolte mi, aby som vám predstavila dnešného hostia, ktorý je veľmi zaujímavý. Máme tu hostia zo spoločnosti BizMut, ktorý je vlastne zakladateľom, ale zároveň aj CEO spoločnosti Niall Donohoe, ktorý k nám prišiel a verím tomu, že budeme mať kopec zaujímavých postrehov a poznatkov dneska ohľadom digitálneho marketingu. Spoločnosť BizMut sa venuje samozrejme digitálnemu marketingu na Slovensku v oblasti B2B segment. To si vysvetlíme určite neskôr. Spoločnosť funguje v Bratislave, v Hamburgu a Niall k nám prišiel z Dublinu, ale vlastne od roku 2015 žije v Bratislave. Jeho príbeh je veľmi zaujímavý práve z toho hľadiska, že narodil sa v Dubline, žil v Mníchove a bol jeden z prvých európskych zamestnancov spoločnosti Google, kde viedol tímy v oblasti marketingu, v oblasti digitálnej reklamy a takisto sa venovali sociálnym sieťam a analýzam. No a aktuálne pracujú s 25-členným tímom v Bratislave, kde sa venujú business-to-business segmentu. A dovolte mi teda, aby som sa predstavila aj ja. Volám sa Lucia Štellerová, pracujem ako senior CEO headhunter spoločnosti Stal plus ERP. Venujeme sa vyhľadávaniu IT manažerov a expertov už viac ako 16 rokov. No a som veľmi rada, že Nextry a Night of Chances mi dala dnes šancu porozprávať sa práve so zaujímavým hosťom. Nextry je samozrejme skvelá spoločnosť, ktorá už viac ako 10 rokov pracuje s top študentami, s top ľuďmi a firmami, ktoré vlastne prepája, vzájomne ľudia dostávajú svoje poznatky a tým pádom vlastne prispievajú k excelentnej kvalite pracovného trhu a takisto verím tomu, že motivujú ľudí, mladých ľudí, aby ostali na Slovensku a začali možno robiť aj svoj vlastný biznis. Ak máte teda akúkoľvek otázku, tak dneska samozrejme klasicky cez Slido. Hashtag máme noc BizMut. Takisto, ak tam už budete, nezabudnite vyplniť aj krátku feedbackovú anketu. Samozrejme, ak máte otázky a chceli by ste nás sledovať aj čo sa týka ostatných podujatí v rámci Night of Chances, tak vás poprosím zaregistrovať sa na Night of Chances online v tzv. Newsletteri a budete vidieť všetky aktivity, ktoré Night of Chances ponúka. No a samozrejme nezabudnite nás sledovať aj na Facebooku, na Instagrame pod hashtagom Night of Chances. Dnešný rozhovor teda bude v angličtine. Verím tomu teda, že vám to pomôže trošku si oprášiť jazyk alebo prípadne zase sa naučiť počúvať niečo iné. So I will switch to English now. Niall, welcome.
Hey.
It's very nice to have you here. So I would be very happy if you can introduce your story. And obviously, the question would be, you have worked in B2B marketing for a really long time. And when was the moment that you realized that this is the business that you want to do? You want to live with it?
Yeah. Well, I think personally, I'm not really one of those people that experiences these eureka moments where suddenly the wool is pulled away from my eyes. I found that I was lucky in a lot of ways to be born in the right time in the right place in Dublin. That at the time that I was graduating from college, Google were hiring, and this looked like a very attractive employer at the time. This was 2005. So I applied for the job, not really having that much of a clue of what was going on within Google at the time. Found out when I started working in this performance marketing field, I had a bit of an aptitude for it. And I think for me, it's always important to find things that you're good at and leverage them as much as possible. When it comes to the B2B side of things, I think this is also something I can kind of consider myself to have stumbled into a little bit. So it was about 7 years ago, I was at a point in my career where I was thinking, what would be the next steps? And while I was doing that, I got in touch with some of my old bosses from when I lived in Germany. And they told me that I got in touch with probably the smartest person I'd ever worked with, which is my then boss, now co-founder Björn. And he had this idea that B2B marketing was going to digitalize hugely over the next years. And this is something that we should really get into, understand in depth and leverage. And for me, this was a no-brainer to work with Björn again. As I said, he's a very smart person. And I think one of the things that I and most people value about work is working with smart people. So, yeah, as I said, there was no real moment. It was just...
You were open to opportunities.
Yeah, as I said, find things that you're good at and leverage them.
Excellent. And so your story, you were born in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
You lived in Germany.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in Slovakia?
Love. So my wife is from Bratislava, and we lived together in Munich for a few years. And then there was a moment where we wanted to move a little bit closer to here. And as I'm a pretty flexible person, and thought, I've been to Bratislava quite often, seems like a nice place, so why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
Moved here, love the place. We're now 7 years later. We've built our home here. We've got a 3-year-old son who is bilingual, which is something I just amazes me. A dog, the whole package, and
Nice.
yeah, we've built our life here now.
So have you tried to learn Slovak?
I have. It is difficult.
Because you speak English and of course German. So
Yes.
is it not easier to learn third language or?
I think it is. I think when I learned German, I was in my mid-20s. Had a lot more time on my hands. These days, family, business, difficult to find the time, but I get by with the little Slovak I have.
It's great. So, and now this is exactly what I want to ask about the strength, because each of us has some strengths, and I guess you have some really, let's say, top few strengths that you have. And do you actually, can you share it with us? And can you tell us also, like, do you share and teach your colleagues and maybe to share the knowledge in your company within your strengths, or?
Yeah, so with everybody who joins our company, within the first few months, we ask them to take a strength assessment test, which was brought in through Clifton Strengths. And the purpose of this is to understand what are people within the company naturally strong at, because it's our belief that what you should do is find the things that you're strong at and leverage them. And I think it's one of the beautiful things of marketing is you can be strong in a lot of different fields, everything from being the real data nerd to just being someone who's excellent at communication and project management, and you can leverage those for a successful career in that field. So we try to make sure that we understand everyone's strengths and we can build kind of customized career paths where they can really leverage those things. To answer your question on what my strengths are,
Yes.
I would say my top 5 strengths that are spat out by this test kind of fall into 2 categories. The first category would be I'm analytical and content. Or context, excuse me. So what that means is that I tend to enjoy associating cause and effect, and I like to look into the past to understand the present and make decisions about the future. So that's on one side. The other 3 strengths are loosely grouped together as well, and they would be that I am an arranger. So I like to organize people within teams, organize resources within those teams. I have a strength in individualization, so I'm able to kind of identify what people are strong at and help them develop that. And the final strength is harmony. So I think I'm able to resolve conflict and bring a feeling of togetherness within the team. So kind of useful things to have when you're leading a company.
Oh, definitely. These are the top important strengths of each CEO, or should be.
Yeah.
I guess people are the top, I guess.
Yeah, I think
at the top.
When I took the test 10 years ago, I had a different strength set. And I think it's over time that kind of working with people and leading people, you begin to develop additional
Yes.
strengths.
yes, the personal development within the experience or business or life experience, it makes us, everyone to change. Excellent. And so I introduced slightly BizMut, but please explain us BizMut in, let's say, Slovakia, or generally what you actually do and why you do it.
Sure. So BizMut is a digital marketing consultancy which focuses on B2B marketing. B2B meaning business to business. So our clients are ones who are typically softwares or corporations whose principal clients are other businesses rather than consumers. And we help those businesses build marketing frameworks and scalable ones, growth marketing projects. And what we also want to do is always make sure that all the activities and campaigns that we run for those businesses are completely measurable to understand, are they driving bottom line business? Are these marketing campaigns doing what they're intended to do? So we do this. Well, why we do this? Because it's hard. As I said, when we kind of looked at this in 2015, we saw that there was going to be very specific challenges for B2B businesses when they moved into the online world. It's a very different prospect, selling to consumers rather than selling to businesses. And we thought that this was a super interesting niche to get into, because not everybody would be able to just intuitively do it. You can't just turn on a Facebook ad campaign or an Amazon ad campaign and hope for the best when you're selling to businesses that have multiple people within them, different stakeholders, etc. So to answer the question why we do it, it's because it's an intellectual challenge. It's difficult and not everyone can.
Yeah, and can you maybe a little bit give us maybe an example, like what you actually can offer to the clients? Let's say, for example, we are a big telecommunication company, and we also have a business customers, or maybe we are manufacturing company and having also like other businesses to sell to. So what can you actually offer to these companies?
So in terms of the services that we offer, I think like most other like digital marketing agencies, digital consultancies, we offer campaign management and things like Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. We also offer consultancy services to help our clients, for example, develop content marketing strategies. What kind of content should they produce that will be engaging and interesting for the target companies that they want to reach? And not just interesting, but will actually inspire those companies to reach out to our clients. We also do consulting in things like website optimization, lead management, competitive analysis. And in addition to that, we're very data oriented. So we will do a lot of analytics, BI with our clients. But all of these things are through the scope of B2B, and that changes things very significantly. So, I mean, if I can give an example, it's quite easy for a B2C company to track, when I put this marketing campaign live, how many shoes did I sell? People click on the ad, they buy the shoes. But when it comes to B2B, you have like 4 or 5 people within a company researching a different topic, having conversations offline. And this becomes significantly more challenging to understand, did the Facebook ad I run actually drive a bottom line business at any point? So these are the challenges that we help solve with our clients.
Yeah, so it's very tricky actually, because companies need to actually attract other companies to be able to maybe sell them their solutions and the business.
Yeah.
So, and I guess companies do request data that you mentioned, that you do a lot of data analytics. And do you use some specific tools, or do you also develop, let's say, BI tools, like technical tools, or you just... because like lots of digital companies are slightly, I would say, a little bit techy as well when it comes to the data analytics.
Yeah, so we're not committed to any specific tools, because we don't want to be perceived as a reseller of certain tools. There are tools that we prefer, we like to work with, that we commit to. And I think we have general expertise in things like Google Analytics, Facebook Analytics, and things like HubSpot, which is a customer relationship management tool, which also has tracking. Sorry, I know that's... We tend to use software like Microsoft's Power BI to both extract data from different sources, pull it together and build beautiful and informative dashboards for our clients so they can see at any time what marketing activities are working, what not, which ads work the best for driving their driving business value, which target groups are engaging the best with which kinds of content. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what would you recommend to maybe our audience, young people who would like to maybe enter this digital marketing business, to maybe take some courses within using, learning to use these digital tools maybe?
Yeah, I think there's an absolute wealth of online courses that are available. So I think shop around on these things, have a look through them. I think specific courses I wouldn't call out. I think one thing that we feel that a lot of people tend to overlook as valuable when you're learning things like new tools is to read the manual. So few people think that they can just take some sort of short circuit or shortcut to expertise. And yes, you can, but I think to really deeply understand any tool or any platform, it's really important to just start at page 1 of the manual and work your way through it. I think only then will you really deeply understand something and be a true expert in the field.
Yes, so I guess reading and trying would be the most important in any new subject. And so why has a digital marketing has become obviously important, and everyone is talking about it, like I guess every company should have some digital marketing strategy because of not just the current situation, like we are online world, but I guess the whole trend is moving forward to this online world anyway. So what is it about digital marketing that companies are maybe underestimating or maybe are over-exaggerating that we need to have it?
I mean, I think in the last decade and a half to 20 years, we've gone from a situation where digital was an afterthought and just a really small slice of the pie when it came to the marketing mix to being, quite honestly, practically the whole marketing mix, and the offline marketing is really considered something that can support digital marketing. I think the attraction of digital marketing compared to offline is the instant feedback that you can get from your digital marketing campaign. So typically, what is marketing is it's an attempt to get a certain segment of people to take a certain action. So come to a website, engage with a piece of content, hand over your contact details if you want to learn more. And I think with digital marketing, you can see if the tactics and strategies you want to work, you can find out almost instantaneously, are they working? You can see how many clicks your Facebook ad got. You can see how many users after clicking decided to fill out a form. And that gives you the opportunity to, in a very dynamic way, steer your strategy like almost instantaneously. Whereas with offline advertising, I mean, you put a TV ad up and you find out like a month later how many impressions, how many views your TV ad got, how many people responded to it, and it's a much slower, more cumbersome approach. So I think that's the real attraction of the topic.
And it's very growing, obviously, the demand on the digital marketing services.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did actually this entire COVID situation help your business to actually to accelerate?
Yes, I think for us, as I said, in 2015, we expected that B2B businesses would start moving more and more online. I think, much like in many other situations, COVID didn't so much change the trend as accelerate it. And what we saw for us, we saw a huge increase in demand for our services because there was a huge increase in demand for the type of clients and products that our clients use or create. So our typical clients are, say, a software as a service tool, which is a productivity tool. So say something like a project management tool, something that can help teams coordinate who are working in a remote situation. Suddenly, last year, a lot of companies needed this kind of thing. And quite honestly, suddenly last year, a lot of venture capital was being thrown at these kind of companies. And then when they get this kind of super boost to their business, they need to find ways that they can accelerate their growth and measure if it's working. And luckily enough, that created a lot of demand for us. I think obviously we experienced the challenge of getting all this demand in one go and suddenly a dispersed team. So this is something that we've had to work on in a lot of details. How do we now coordinate with one another? I think for us, we were kind of lucky that we were already quite used to working at a distance. We were quite liberal on things like home office. We already organize ourselves through a project management tool called Asana. We're already using Microsoft Teams for years. So for us, it wasn't such a earthquake in terms of how our day-to-day lives were run, but I think it's still always challenging.
And so what about the clients? Can you tell us maybe for what clients do you work for at the moment, and maybe why is BizMut a difference with comparing to maybe your competitors or other digital agencies?
Yeah, sure. I think our clients, in terms of where they sit, are very international. So we've got clients who are sitting in California, New York, London, Paris. The vast majority of them have some kind of connection to Germany, where our mother company sits, Think3. But I think the vast majority of our clients are fairly widely spread across the world, and certainly in terms of the markets that they're selling into are very diverse. In terms of who those clients are, they would fall into, I would say, two main categories. The first category would be young startup businesses, usually having gone through their first rounds of funding. They've built great products. They're ready to start marketing, but they have no idea where to start marketing or what to do. So with those kind of clients, we are really working from scratch with them, building up a marketing framework, thinking which channels, which tactics within those channels work the best, could work the best, and rolling them out, finding out what works, because we have this instantaneous feedback loop I talked about earlier on, stopping the things that don't work and scaling the things that do. So that's the one category there. Quite an exciting group of clients to work with. We tend to be working with very interesting founders, CEOs of these businesses. The other category of clients that we have are kind of more in the corporate world. So it tends to be businesses that have, like large corporations that have some sort of B2B elements to them. So we've worked with, say, large energy companies, banks, things like this, who also have an element where they want to sell into other businesses. This type of client is, I think, also quite exciting to work with. That the learning curve is a little slower for them. I think the corporate world is always that little bit kind of slower to adjust, adapt. There's a lot of lines of approval you need to get through. You're not just talking to the leader of the business and they just go, yeah, do this, do that. But I think these are the main categories of clients that we have.
It's very interesting. So when you mentioned the startups and the fresh new companies, is it true that there is lots of young CEOs that you work with when it comes to this? Yeah,
I mean, a lot of them have like 10 to 15 years on me. So yeah, it's one way to start feeling really old, is work with a lot of young companies. But it's exciting as well. I think it's really, as I said, I think one of the beautiful things about working with these startups is that we very often are talking with like these visionary leaders within the companies, and they're excited about their business. They can be a little chaotic sometimes,
Yes.
but I think it's our job to bring structure and clarity to these projects, and I think our team does an excellent job at that.
And I guess also the experience that you can provide for them has a huge value.
Yeah.
And are they maybe stubborn sometimes? Like they think they have ideas, their own ideas about the marketing, and then you try to convince them about better ways? Or?
I mean, they can be.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But in the end, I think the beauty of our business in terms of performance marketing is that we collect a lot of data. And in the end, when there's a disagreement about how to approach something, we simply test it, check the numbers, and figure out who's right. And I think this is, you can take the kind of opinion out of things a lot of the time. You just need to think what makes most sense to test at any one time.
Yeah. The numbers are always a great proof, I guess.
Yeah.
In every business.
I mean, like, numbers don't prove everything. I think we're not some kind of robots, but I think in a lot of the time it takes the heat out of any argument.
Excellent. And do you also have like a specific business model for which is maybe a different from other agencies, or?
Yeah. We've, rather than follow the typical media agency approach, which is to negotiate that they will be paid based on a percentage of the media spend that they have. So if they spend 100,000 euro on Facebook ads, they get paid 10,000 euro for it, for example. We took a different approach and borrowed our business model from the consulting world. So we bill our clients on a hourly basis. So for every hour we work, we bill our clients a certain amount. And we found that worked for a number of reasons. I think on the one hand, we felt that the classic agency model is quite unfair. So I think it can be very often that you don't have to do very much work to collect your percentage of the spend. You just spend the money and collect it. But on the other hand, sometimes if you want to do like activities which tend to be low on media spend but are still high in terms of business value that they can produce, you don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
So we thought that it's a much fairer model for both sides to simply charge for the work that we do. The advantages we get from that are, I mean, on the one side, we can be very honest and we don't need to be biased in the advice that we give to our clients. We don't need to tell them you need to spend a truckload of money on this activity because otherwise we won't get paid. We can kind of be honest brokers and say what we think works and what we think is nonsense. It also helps us within the team to plan capacity. So we try to make sure that we look at how many hours we have sold all the time and make sure that the team will be able to handle this kind of workload.
Excellent. So I guess that the customers must be quite happy that you give them this, let's say, fair and transparent options.
Yeah,
for the business.
I think so. I hope so. I think the other thing that we offer all our customers, unlike other agencies, is any one of our customers can cancel a contract with us within one business day.
Mm-hmm.
And that might feel that it creates unnecessary pressure because I think other agencies typically have 3, 6, 12-month cancellation periods. But what we've found is that what it actually helps with is it means that we don't have to involve ourselves in a lot of business pitches. So I think working in other agencies, I think a lot of people spend their time, like 20, 30% of their time, like constantly putting together sales pitches. Nobody in our team ever has to do this kind of work on this kind of topic, so we can just work on the things that drive value, that allow our team to learn, grow, and investigate new things. So I think they would be the two most significant differences in our business model, I would say.
And that's a good topic, actually. Can you maybe describe us your team? Like, what type of people work in your team? Are they based? I guess they're all experts, but you hired them as an expert, or they grew with you as an expert?
I mean, Yeah, I think first, like, our team is rather international. I think it's last time I checked, it was about 50-50 in terms of Slovak versus international people. It's very wide variety of nationalities in there. Do we hire experts? Yes. However, what we found over the years is that the way we approach things and the fields that we work in, this B2B marketing field, there isn't so many people who are absolute experts in those fields. And what we've really found is our most successful way of hiring is to hire rather inexperienced people, but the right kind of person. So I think things like how to optimize Google campaigns can be learned, but the kind of characteristics and the qualities that we look for in people are kind of inherent in that person. So I would say from the 25, 26 people that we have in Bratislava at the moment, nearly everybody was hired as a junior and has developed over the years into roles like senior marketing consultants, head of campaign management, etc. So we really see that we can rather fast track people's careers in that way.
That's excellent. So I guess it connects very well with the next question. That means what allows you to do a great work for your clients?
I mean, great people. Simple as that. Yes. We are an absolutely people-centered business, and without really skilled, really smart people, our business falls apart. We don't have like a product that we can lean on. So, yeah, I think that's the short answer for once.
And yeah, that's interesting, because you mentioned that when you hire maybe less experienced people, you can teach them the hard skills. Mm-hmm. But important is also when you hire a person, he or she should have some, let's say, the something in them that's like a soft skills. Mm-hmm. So what is it for you that the future team member should have?
Mm-hmm. I think there's probably three things that are the most important. One of them I already mentioned is that somebody has to be a very good learner. You need to be a quick learner and probably an independent learner. There's a team of people around you that will support what you're learning, but in the end, I think people have to drive themselves to learn things. And as I said before, if it's to define what kind of person on the learning side we like to work with, it's the type of person who reads the manual. Except for that, I think to be successful in this field, you need to have an analytical mind. And like, analytical doesn't really mean you're doing trigonometry every day, or you need to be excellent at algebra. For me, analytical means you enjoy associating cause and effect. You like to see, like, okay, we took this action, and that resulted in this result. So I think analytical is very important, and I think you have to be interested in people. As I said, we're a very people-oriented business. We have a team that engages with one another all the time, and we're talking with our clients all the time. I mean, me personally, I spend my entire day talking to people, but I think most of the team will also be doing that quite often. So I think these are the three most important things, kind of soft skills, characteristics, whatever you want to call them, that I would look for, and the type of person I enjoy to work with.
That's great. And so you are actually, managing a team, mm-hmm. also probably talking also to clients, and of course, each CEO who is having a business is also making sometimes failures. And so, are there any failures that you have made and you've actually learned the great lessons from? Or
I mean, plenty. And I think when you're in a business that grows as quick as ours does, there's always going to be moments where you drop the ball on certain things. What we try to do is make sure that we collect a lot of feedback from our team. We try to do that as regularly as possible. And the feedback that we collected towards the end of last year in our kind of larger annual company-wide employee satisfaction survey was that people didn't feel that we had a clearly enough mapped out how they can develop certain career paths within the company. So we were very excited all the time, throwing learning at people, throwing them into situations where they could learn new topics and gain confidence in them. But there wasn't enough structure, and this was very clearly pointed out by our team. So we follow a OKR structure, objectives and key results. So we set ourselves a main goal each quarter of what we want to fix within the company, bring to the company, etc. And our OKR for the quarter after that was to really clearly map out for people how they can develop into different roles within the company. So, and not just roles where they go from like junior to senior to team lead kind of development, but also how they can develop in a more horizontal way. So how can I become an expert in content marketing? How can I become a business intelligence specialist or something like that? So what we did was we, in quite minute and maybe over the top detail, mapped out for every role that exists within the company, what experience somebody would need to accumulate to move into this role, like what complexity of project would they have to manage, etc. What education they would need to complete. So here we love to lean on external education for as much topics as possible because we can't, but there are certain things that we also need to build our own education platforms for because sometimes nobody does it the same way that we do. And the third thing was what kind of soft skills the employees would need to demonstrate. So yeah, this is something that I always, when people ask, when in interview situations, how can I develop within the company, I'm always very happy to whip out our documentation and show them in detail that we really can set goals that help people develop quickly and thankfully now in a more structured way.
That's great, and this is important that obviously receiving a feedback and obviously also giving a feedback is the most important for employees and employer. And so how did you build up the culture of feedback within your company, or like did you actually, because you know it's very, we had a discussion the other day with my coach, and he said like our Slovak people are not from students, we are not used to give feedbacks to teachers, we are not used to give feedbacks to let's say our bosses, because we don't know how to, and giving a feedback and receiving feedback is something tricky. So how did you actually?
Yeah, I think it's especially tricky when we have such an international environment where there's such different attitudes to authority. I think this kind of initiatives and how can we encourage a culture of feedback needs to come from the top in a way that I'm meaning that it needs to be led by example. We want to create a culture within the company which gives candid feedback to everybody, and we followed a system called radical candor, which was defined by Kim Scott in the same name book. And the basic concept here is that to give good and listened to feedback and accepted feedback, you need to show that you care personally about the person to whom you're giving the feedback, and then you need to be able to challenge them directly. And the point here is that I think it's very important that you first show people that you care about them personally before you give that direct and move on to giving direct feedback, because if you don't do that, you're just going to come across as a bit of a jerk. Yes. But if you only show that you care personally without ever giving direct feedback, people will never know where they really stand with you. So, you know, I think these two things need to be combined to have a level of authenticity to them. And I think what needs to underline, or like what's important to do either of those things, care personally or challenge people directly, is that you need to be sincere about it. It's very easy for anyone to see if you fake caring about them. It's also very easy for people to see if you're just challenging them directly because it says so in the manual. So this is the kind of culture that we try to bring out in people. And as I said, I think it needs first to be shown by the management. but once you kind of find a rhythm of that, this stuff is contagious. And I think it's always great, for me, a great moment when that shy person who would never have given me feedback before suddenly challenges me directly on something, and I realize, actually, yeah, they're right.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that was our overall approach.
And I think it's important to actually to share the positive feedback and also obviously the negative feedback. So
absolutely. I think it needs to be in good balance of both.
Yes.
But I think what's really important is when you are sharing the negative feedback, people see that it's coming from a place of you want them to develop, you care about them, you care about their future, and if you want to give this kind of feedback in a authentic, sincere way.
That's important, actually. So, and this is actually leading me to this part of actually hiring. So, this situation, probably your business is growing, so you have probably the opportunities of hiring new people. So do you have any open positions at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I think, we have this luxury that I talked about where we have a huge amount of demand for our services. Right now, we're really hiring talented people who are interested in marketing or experienced in marketing at all levels. So as I told you before, we're very happy to hire really smart, eager to learn juniors. We have huge success in doing so, but I think we need to also always make sure that we keep a balance. So right now, we're hiring at all levels: junior, mid-level, senior, and I think if anyone's interested in such a thing, they can look us up on Professia, which is still, I think, one of the main platforms here, or if not the only, and or just visit BizMut.de. I think.
So they can probably apply also directly to your website.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. They can also just connect with me on LinkedIn and say hi. There's plenty of avenues.
Yes, and so how do you assess that? Let's say a junior comes to you and you think, okay, so this could be our new colleague. What would be the main characteristics of this person?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I think it's definitely learning and analytical, and like somebody who has good people skills. And what we really want to see is that somebody has a clear idea of where they want to take their career. And it doesn't mean that they need to kind of really understand like exactly what steps they want to take, but I think what we always try to do with anyone that we start working with is kind of understand with them, what do you see as the pinnacle of your career, and where would BizMut fit into this? What building blocks are we bringing? Like, I mean, it's 2021. We don't expect that everybody spends 20, 30 years in the same job anymore. And I think we always want to make sure is that we both have a clear idea of what we're going to get out of the relationship. So apart from those kind of three main characteristics I talked about before, I think I would add that as well.
And when it comes to questions like, okay, you maybe wants to find out if the candidate has enough analytical thinking. So do you have a tricky questions that you might ask them? Like some companies use very specific questions. So
I mean, there's a practical element to our interview process. I think from my point of view, these questions, it's not so much important with these questions to understand or to see if the person gets the right answer. So, but it's more to understand how does someone approach a problem. I think these kind of abstract analytical problems that you give people are more to understand how do they think about things, do they give up on things, and I think these are the type of things we look for. We look for people who can, if the solution isn't immediately obvious, they stick with it. They try hard. As I said, what we do is hard. It takes a lot of brain power, and that's the kind of people that we love to work with.
So if you ask somebody a question, for example, how many ping pong balls are there in the world?
Yeah.
And the interviewer answers, I don't know. I guess that's the wrong answer.
I mean, it's certainly not a right answer, but like I think there's not going to be a right answer, but
Yes.
it does probably tell us something about that the person maybe doesn't love a challenge.
Exactly. So I do recommend to young professionals, if they do get sometimes unexpected questions, try to think the answer before you answer no. Try to maybe think about the answer.
Give it a shot.
Exactly. And okay. So you mentioned we were talking about the colleagues and characteristics, and we also mentioned the hard skills that you can actually teach to people. So why are the hard skills important
I mean,
to you?
you need. I mean, soft skills are. From my point of view, like the most important. As I said, finding the right kind of person is quite important because hard skills can be learned. Soft skills, not so much. I think the hard skills are important because, well, you can't really do the job without those hard skills, right? So
Especially in digital marketing.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess in any.
yeah, I think it is quite a technical field. You do need to learn kind of a lot of different platforms, how they work, kind of understand how to get results out of them. But I think what's really important for us is to make sure that we don't force the same generic hard skills down everyone's throat. And the different people have different strengths, different interests. For us, it's really important to make sure that we can kind of customize everyone's learning path to learn the things that they're good at, that they enjoy to work on. I mean, you know, it's not utopia. We don't all get to work on things that we all love all the time, but we like to make sure that people have a clear path of how they can develop into working on the things that they really have a passion for.
Yeah, and we have a couple of last few seconds for a last question. Do you have any, let's say, 1 or 2 books that you would recommend people to read?
Yeah, I mean, I would be quite skeptical of recommending books about online marketing because particularly about the technical side of things, because I think by the time the book is published, it's already obsolete. But I think what I'd recommend is books that kind of teach you a way of thinking that can be used in Google Analytics. So one of my favorite books is a book by Annie Duke. She is a poker champion and wrote a book called Thinking in Bets. And it's about how you can make decisions in work, in your life, based on assessing what's the probability of one thing happening or not. So I think this kind of skill is absolutely critical to what we do, is to kind of think in terms of what's the likelihood of something happening. If that happens, how good or bad will the result be? So I think Annie Duke, Thinking in Bets. I already mentioned Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And I mentioned OKRs briefly earlier on, but I think if anyone's thinking about developing themselves or their own business in a structured way, I would recommend Measure What Matters by John Doerr.
Oh, yeah, measuring important thing.
Exactly.
Excellent. So we are finally here at the questions from Slido, and we are quite happy to see plenty of questions. So let's start with first one. What is your trick to deal with the work-life balance?
So I think we don't really have a trick to deal with work-life balance. As I mentioned earlier on, I think it's quite important for us to make sure that we don't overload the teams in as much as possible. So it's about making sure that we evenly distribute the amount of work across the team. And if we do see that someone gets overloaded, and quite honestly, in the agency world, it can happen from time to time, we want to make sure that we address it early and in as severe a way as possible. I think if somebody's massively overloaded and you just kind of say, relax for a while, it's going to be really ineffective. You need to take things away from them, make sure that they do, and find time to enjoy their life. I think it's something that's absolutely critical for me as well. Like I'm not personally the kind of person who works 12, 15 hours a day. I know that's maybe not the type of thing that most business heads say, but I think everyone needs to make sure that they find and make time for themselves outside of work. And I think there's no real trick to it. It's just about monitoring it and making sure that people don't get overloaded.
Yes, and if they do, they should really speak to their boss and give them probably a feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. But my expectation would be their boss already knows.
Yeah, excellent. And look, we have already action questions. Can I send you my CV even if I don't match any job you have open now?
Absolutely. As I said, for us, it's a very broad profile, broad profiles that are happy to talk to. In my view, so many people can leverage their skill set to succeed in marketing. If people feel that they don't perfectly match a role, it's totally fine to send in the CV. We very often can kind of look at a CV and say, actually, that is a skill set that we don't have on the team at the moment that we'd like to bring in more, and you'd be surprised how often that happens. So the answer to that is yes.
Exactly. So you just need to be able to sell yourself, even if you don't have the experience. But what you need to sell is, I guess, your attitude. So what was the moment you realized the marketing industry is the perfect match for you? We mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was this moment where I realized that it was.
Hey.
I think it's for me just to do with I like numbers, and I like to see the results of my work quickly, and I draw a huge amount of satisfaction from that. I also like dealing with people. I like organizing people. I like seeing them develop, and I think these two things are. I'm lucky enough to have found a job that allows me to do both of those things. So, but there was no moment where I was like woke up from a dream and was suddenly realized I'm going to be a marketing.
And
marketer.
when you look back within your career, is there is a question: is there any step in your career that you would do differently, maybe?
I mean, that I can think of from the top of my head, not really.
Yeah.
I think for me, when I worked in Google for 2 years, I think this was enough for me at the time. I think this kind of larger corporate environment, even when Google is like, has the reputation as like the great corporation to work for, I think the 2 years that I had there were enough, and it was the right time to leave. And I think I felt also the same about the other roles that I held in Germany. So it's a great question, and one that I'll probably think of for the rest of the evening, but I can't give a good answer to it right now.
Well, I guess if you look where you are now, you did something right, because you are a CEO, you have your own company, and successful company. So that means you probably, there is no maybe such a thing that you might regret or do different.
I think if we think about the things I've done right, I've found great people to work with. But that's both in terms of like my co-founders, Björn and Jan, but also everybody that I work with within the team. We are very careful about selecting the right kind of people to work with, and this is what I've done right. So, yeah.
Good. And so you have a job offers available, but can people bring new skills to open a new types of positions that we mentioned? Kind of.
Yeah,
you're open
absolutely.
To this?
I think if I can give an example, like we feel that there is, for example, sometimes we need more people who are able to work on things like marketing automation and CRM. There's not a very fixed position for that in our company at the moment, but if we see these kind of skills show up on CVs that are not really applying for a specific thing, we're thinking, okay, let's bring this person in. So there's always things that we can improve by bringing in external experts as well.
That's good. And actually, what did you study? Was it like, how did you actually got into this performance marketing and B2B?
I studied history and literature and did my master's in American literature. So it might seem that that's absolutely nothing to do with marketing, and to an extent it isn't, but I think you can see parallels. So within history, actually the type of history I enjoyed the most was where we studied the statistics from a particular time, looked at the past, understand the future. But it was quite a interesting leap into the online marketing world, but I think it's quite a broad church. We take all kinds.
I think you can study whatever you want, and basically even if you get interested into different topic, important is to just keep keep studying new topics and just don't stop, basically.
Yeah, I think success comes from a thirst for learning and a bias towards action. I think that's from, and I think if you can combine those two things, you'll go a long way.
So you talked about your team, their motivation, etc. So what motivates you? Where do you get your energy for work?
Yeah, people ask me this a lot because I don't drink coffee. So they say, where do you get your energy? I get my energy from seeing people develop and I love the moment where someone's on a client call and they suddenly demonstrated massive expertise in a certain field. They lead a conversation that 3 months ago, 12 months ago, you would never have seen this person showing that level of skill and expertise. So honestly, where I get my best joy from work is when I'm going home in the evening and I'm thinking, wow, that person's really come a long way in the last year, month, etc. So
it gives you more energy.
Yeah, I love coaching.
And about loving things, it's a funny question here. Is can you compare a Slovak and Irish beer?
I can.
Now be careful.
Ireland doesn't have so much of a beer culture in terms of the Ležiak, the lager.
Okay.
So obviously everyone knows we drink a lot more Guinness.
Yes, Guinness.
I would say, I'm still going to say I prefer Guinness. It's nice, smooth, tastes like ice cream. For me, I would say the morning after a lot of Guinness is a lot worse than the morning after sometime on the Slovak beers. But
okay. And actually you get the Guinness here, I guess, sometimes. Somewhere.
I do, but I still drink local.
Okay.
So I think I'm more likely to order local beer.
Excellent. And so what are the top 3 movies, documentaries you like or you would recommend to young people to watch?
Wow. Good question. I mean, I do watch a lot of documentaries. I think you've left me a little stumped.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of documentaries as well. For example, inspiring is very much for me to look at the documents of biologies of people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the stories of people, like how they got where they are, and maybe looking at the different documentaries within the industries, how they developed.
Yeah, I like to watch a lot of documentaries about psychology, things like how the psyche develops, how people's minds work, what we've experienced in that time. I think there's a great documentary on a very mixed character at the time called Bernays. He was the founder of public relations in the US in the early part of the 20th century. And I like the documentaries that talk about characters who are maybe a bit black and white in terms of they're good parts and bad parts of them. But really, right now when I've been put on the spot, I'm a little stumped to come up with something. But
it's fine.
I'll share it on LinkedIn tomorrow if anyone wants to have a look.
Yeah. And what is your personal favorite type of client? That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like.
Who pays a lot?
I like clients who understand enough about what we do that they will be able to engage with us, provide us what we need, understand what we're, but not the type of client who thinks they know better than everybody else. And I think it's a fine balance there. But I think if I'm to think of what my ideal client is, I think it is this kind of software as a service, very innovative types of tools, open-minded, willing to listen, willing to learn, and ready to scale, and one that can get things done on their side where we need them to handle things like tracking, setup, technical things. I think these are the ideal client for me, and I think it's always great when they've got a fun personality as well. We tend to only work with clients who share our values.
That's great. And this is a question which has been probably already answered, but what jobs do you currently offer?
Yeah, so right now what's open is any level of marketing manager. So for us, even an entry level, like a junior marketing manager, doesn't need to have a huge amount of experience. They need to have a huge amount of interest in the topic, understand what they're getting themselves into. But we are really looking at all levels of experience at the moment, because I think there's advantages and disadvantages of working with all types of people. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we are running out of time, but my last question would be actually languages. Would you recommend the students or future employees to learn also other languages than maybe English only? Does German helps you a lot with business, for example?
no.
No?
Being honest, I think we're working in the online tech German world. English is very widely spoken, and quite often a lot of our clients are international people, though they're sitting in a German company. So if I'm honest, I think it's hugely advantageous from a social point of view, from a cultural point of view, to learn new languages, and I love doing that with German. But I think if there's a business advantage to it, I'm more skeptical.
Okay. Well, Niall, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. Ďakujeme vám za sledovanie. A ešte jedna malá poznámka. To, že nemáme rúška, máme vlastne dodržaný odstup 2 metre a obidvaja sme teda očkovaní, tak len aby ste si boli istí, že dodržiavame všetky regulácie podľa zdravotníctva. Ďakujeme veľmi pekne a sledujte nás aj na budúce. Pekný večer.